My name is Jared Ruth. I'm the Director of Marketing for Cox Business Cloud Solutions. I've also got Dan here with us today from Veeam. Dan, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yep. Thanks, Jared. This is Dan Burke with Veeam on the cloud and service provider side of the business.
Perfect. So welcome to our session on modern data availability and backup with Veeam. We're going to be focused today on, backup strategies to ensure your business, you have business continuity through these rapidly changing times. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide. Okay, thanks, Dan. So before we jumped in today, we did just want to take a minute and recognize our veterans. Just say thank you for your incredible contribution to our country and for our freedom. Whether you're an active or active vet, or if you've been a vet in the past or family, etc. Just wanted to say thank you for your incredible contribution. And we obviously believe that our country is free because of the amazing sacrifice that you've all made. So thank you. All right, couple webinar reminders before we get into this. This webinar is being recorded and will be shared following today's session. If you have questions throughout the presentation, go ahead and put them in the chat window over to your right. We're also going to be doing some surveys during the course of this event, which you'll see over to the right as well. You can answer those survey questions as we go through it. Okay, so I wanted to start with today just who is Cox Business and who is Cox Business Cloud Solutions, and then we're going to jump into Veeam. So just real quick, Cox Business is a service provider that's been in the business for about a little over 20 years. But we're backed by Cox Enterprises, and many people don't know that we're actually we've been around in innovating in technology for over 120 years. So CEI, Cox Enterprises, was founded in 1898. And I think a fascinating fact about the company is we're still privately held and family owned and operated, which is really unique in this space, especially for the size we are at just over $20 billion in revenue annually. We've got a highly diversified portfolio of companies, and that includes not only telecommunications, but also includes media. We've got a very large presence in the automotive industry space with Kelley Blue Book, Auto Trader, Mannheim Auto Auctions, and a litany of other things. And then we're actively making investments in clean tech and also in areas like healthcare and others, just to kind of pave the way for the future. On the technical side, though, we do have 6 million plus customers, both residential and commercial. And at any given time, we're operating about 8.5 million active devices. So our network is really large. So just trying to give you everybody a size and scale what that looks like. The way that we got into the cloud services business was a little bit unique. About 2 years ago, we acquired a company called RapidScale. It was founded in 2008, and it was one that was a very fast up-and-comer, rapidly growing into global managed cloud service provider. And what we really loved about them as well as they married up with us in our discussions was their industry-leading customer experience metrics, very customer focused, and we saw that was a strategic investment for us. So you bring those two together, Cox Business, RapidScale. Cox Business Cloud Solutions has been born. It was born a couple of years ago. It gave us an opportunity to have a highly agile and speed to market company with proven stability and strong financial backing. So this is really key, right? Especially when you consider the market that we're in right now. There's a lot of companies that can move fast, but you also want to make sure you have a provider that is also going to be there in the long run. And being here 120 years, we're definitely going to be here for the long run. So the other thing is just our unparalleled focus on our customers. We win awards all the time, and are setting the pace for our focus on our customers. So just wanted to give you a quick update or background on what that looks like. Also, when you look at our portfolio of services, we cover the gamut on the cloud space, starting from desktop as a service, infrastructure as a service, DR, security as a service, SD-WAN backup, which we're going to be talking about today, and then all the way down to the desktop as far as Microsoft Office 365, and then identity as a service as well. So now they've got that out of the way, I wanted to go ahead and introduce our backup partner, Veeam. I'm going to let Dan do most of the bragging about this company. It's a phenomenal company, quadrant leader, and so Dan, take it away.
Thanks, Jared. Oh, you guys picking up an echo? I apologize. So yeah, I appreciate the intro. Veeam, right? We're super excited to be talking with you folks today and to be partnering with Cox Business and RapidScale. We've had this engagement together, working together for a couple of years now, and Cox Business and RapidScale is a gold partner of ours. And really, we're super excited about the growth and the opportunity that that we're going to be able to take down over the next few years. So happy to be here with you today. A little bit about Veeam. Number one in market share in EMEA when it comes to backup, disaster recovery, and data availability. And then number three worldwide. So we're talking about some of the big names that you probably recognize, and some of them you can see here on the Magic Quadrant. 170 plus top industry awards, and a huge vendor ecosystem. So even if you haven't necessarily looked at Veeam powered services through a partner like Cox Business, it's entirely possible that you've had some opportunity to learn about Veeam through maybe some of these other vendors that you see here on the slide. Also super exciting and new as of 2020, we've moved up significantly in the Gartner Magic Quadrant, and really talking about the completeness of vision and the ability to execute, right? So I think as much as anything, that speaks to the breadth and the quality of our portfolio. And anybody who knows anything about Veeam over the last decade knows that we've really moved from being your standard sort of virtualization backup provider to all sorts of additional tools, from agents, Office 365, and all the rest of those sorts of things. So super excited about the growth, and again, really excited to be partnered with Cox Business. A little bit more of a brag slide here, and I won't read it to you because there's a lot of information in here, but what I love to point out on this slide when I'm talking with partners and customers is the 82% of the Fortune 500. So, if we're just spitballing numbers, 3/4 of the Fortune 500 are using Veeam today. And again, a spitball number, half of the Global 2000, which speaks as much as anything to our market penetration, right? And the popularity of the product and the offerings. 375,000 customers worldwide and growing, constantly. And $1 billion in revenue last year. And our biggest and most productive partner community is our service provider community, our Veeam Cloud and Service Provider Group, of which RapidScale is one of our fastest growing. So again, we're super excited to be engaged here and looking to grow the partner relationship. So today we want to talk about some of the business challenges here. I love this slide because a lot of folks don't really give a whole lot of thought to their IT availability, right, and disaster recovery and those sorts of things. And this is a classic Dilbert here, and I know that a lot of folks on the call probably are thinking a little bit about what their backup and disaster recovery plans look like. To that point, I want to point out a couple of important data points here. 94% of companies that suffer catastrophic data loss will not survive. That is startling. 42% will never reopen, and 51% will close within 2 years. Then 93% of businesses that suffer a data loss of more than 10 days file for bankruptcy within a year. These, and I don't want to scare anybody, right, because that's not what we're here to do. We want to inform you, but this is worth spending some time thinking about. Do you have a real plan? Do you know your plan? Do you understand it? Have you tested it? Have you executed it in the past, actually? And that takes us to our first webinar poll. Thank you, Summer. So the question is, whoops, okay. It's popped up in front of me here. The question is, sorry.
I can grab that, Dan, if you'd like.
There we go. Sorry, I couldn't read it. Are you confident that you can recover your data in the event of a loss or breach? Absolutely. We have a plan. Possibly. We'll see when it happens. And no, I'm scared to death. So want to get some feedback from the group here. See what you guys have got in place today. And then we'll give you a couple seconds to click through that. And I've closed it, Jared, so let me know if you can see folks jumping in there and giving us a little bit of feedback.
Sure. Right. Sure. Yeah, I'd say too, Dan, this one's an interesting one because I can tell you from a customer experience and who we interface with, a lot of times, folks will think that they have a plan and they think it's a good one until something happens, right? And we find that they haven't tested it. And unfortunately at that point it's a little bit too late. And again, not to scare people, but it's one of those things where not only to have a plan, but make sure you test your plan is important too, which we'll get into more in detail here. So
right.
But we'll leave this poll open for about 5 minutes, and then when we see the answers come through, Summer, you can go ahead and post those up, and we'll go back to them.
Cool. So as it's a Forrester report, take a look at kind of poll results here across a larger business community. 18% of businesses feel very prepared to recover their data center in the event of a disaster. That is a startlingly low number. There's a lot that goes into that, but I guess what I would say is if you chose option C there, you're not necessarily alone. And we're not talking about this being a problem with small businesses only, right? There are commercial businesses, enterprises, and frankly, the bigger the company, sometimes the more complicated and unreliable these solutions are, right? So 18%, scary numbers. So we want to talk a little bit about some of the common problems that we run into here with folks' backup and disaster recovery plans. First one we see a ton is just the recurring backup failures, whether that's jobs not completing because of some sort of technical problem, or not having the necessary storage on-prem to run those backups to completion, or even in the old days you have tape problems and those sorts of things. And then we've got recovery failures, right? This is also a big one. You might have those backups running every night and think they're going great, but then one day you have to go and restore somebody's contacts or the most important Excel spreadsheet that the finance department uses, and you realize that even though the backup run and it said it completed, it might not have actually either captured the data or been able to get it back for you. And then infrastructure issues, right? And this is sort of the classic one. I've been in this business a long time, and I have seen a lot of scary backup infrastructure configurations. Sometimes it's an old server, sometimes it's a USB drive, sometimes it might be an old workstation with a big hard drive in it, right? And those are the sorts of things that can burn you, right? It's not enterprise class infrastructure, and is likely to to bite you at some point. The other thing we see a ton out there are complex backup environments. A lot of them are going to require specialized hardware. So I grabbed the picture of the old tape drive here, and we've all reliably used tape at one point or another. But these are complicated solutions, right? Rotating tape, understanding the inventory, understanding which tapes are on-prem, which tapes are off, being kept in another location. And the ongoing cost of making sure that you have that data available and on current media. Offsite media rotation. Again, this is another one where we talk about your ability, and we'll get into it a little bit further about recovery time and recovery point objective, but just taking that data, that tape, for example, offsite and putting it somewhere else significantly impacts your ability to be able to recover data in a timely fashion. And then having multiple solutions for different data and applications. This one is really very common, especially in your slightly larger environments, right? You might have a particular backup routine specific to an accounting package, and then you have a different backup solution that's backing up your file server, and something else that's that's custom for an important application that you might have running within the data center or on-prem. and managing all of those different solutions and applications can become a huge drag on the crew.
Yeah, I thought that was the 8-track from your car there.
Yeah, I just replaced that one the other day, but it's in the basement. It's in a box, so I'll have to.
Kidding.
Additional business challenges here. Moving on to the next one. Unable to meet the business requirements. This is a big one, and a lot of times we get stuck talking about IT when we talk about backup, but we always have to remember that this is really about providing recoverability for your business, right? And yes, IT is important and we talk about it a bunch, but it's a component to the business, right? So being able to meet the business requirements is critical. One of the ones that we see a lot, especially as we talk about, again, recovery time and recovery point, is those long backup windows. A lot of folks have solutions out there that can't actually back up all of the data in that 24-hour period. So by the time the next job kicks off, the previous one might not have finished. So now you've got a gap potentially of multiple days, weeks, months of data that isn't getting backed up, or it impacts the recoverability or the recovery time. So that data you thought you had from last night might be older than that in the event that you need to recover it. I do have a recovery time and recovery point slide here, but really what this is talking about is your ability to be able to get the data back in a timely fashion and how old that data is when we get it back. And we'll dig into that a little bit further. Limited granular recovery options. This is a big one. There are a lot of environments where you have to restore everything. Sometimes we think about SQL databases, right? You have to do a full restore of a SQL database in order to get an individual record back. And start to piece together things, different application data in the event of corruption or loss. So having the ability to do granular restores simplifies everything, speeds up the process. And then compliance requirements. This is also a really big one, right? And a lot of folks don't spend time thinking about it. But here are a couple examples. In the securities world, you need to keep customer records for 6 years. Financial is 5. Labor law says that you need to keep payroll records for 3 years. And EEOC says you need to keep personnel records for at least 1 year after an employee leaves or is terminated. So these are retention requirements that need to be taken into consideration when folks start to get into their backup and recovery plans.
Hey Dan, looks like we got some results back on the poll, so I just want to jump in here.
Yeah.
So it looks like 72 didn't respond, which we'll just go ahead and accept that as you don't have a plan. We have about 16% that say absolutely we have a plan, which actually marries up pretty well with your slide there, and the facts around 18% have a plan. And then possibly see what happens, about 12% responded there. So, but in general, yeah, I think from a we have a plan perspective, it's pretty close to what you were sharing on your slide.
Cool. Well, that's great. I mean, it's obviously it's critical to have a plan, and we'll talk about how Cox Business Solutions can definitely help supplement some of those plans in terms of offsite backup, recoverability, managed services, and we'll get to that as we dig further into the deck. But thanks for pulling in that feedback for me.
You got it.
So full-time backup management, this is another one we talk a lot about, right? Mitigating risks requires a full-time employee. There's no reason why, especially in kind of the commercial space, that a full-time employee should be spending more, than a couple of minutes a day, maybe just taking a look at the notifications and say that the backup completed successfully, right? If it's requiring more time than that, it's time to start thinking about whether that solution's a good fit for the business or not. Backups aren't revenue generating activity. Don't necessarily need to point this out, but it's worth just noting that, those FTE that are working in the IT department, it's their job to be making the business more productive. Whether that's upgrading applications, implementing new solutions, streamlining things. These are the sorts of things you want them to do to be able to help the business drive revenue, right? Not spend a bunch of time working on failed backups. Then ongoing management prevents businesses from focusing on digital transformation. This is a big one, and there's a lot that goes into this idea of digital transformation. And I know we're all talking about it or reading about it all the time. But if you're really struggling with your on-prem applications, things aren't running smoothly, in addition to those backups, that's preventing people from focusing on how to do things like move email to Office 365 or upgrade legacy applications that might not be supported by the vendor, or older versions of Windows that might not be supported by Microsoft, right? These are the things that your IT folks should be focused on. Concerns about cross-contamination. This is another one that is coming up more and more, right? We see increasingly sophisticated ransomware attacks, malware attacks happening across the business landscape. And the important thing to point out here as it relates to cross-contamination is, are those attacks not just attacking production, getting at the production data and production applications, but is it also contaminating the backups, right? Encrypting those backups. Are you sure you've got an air gap between, whether it's firewalls or a separate network, separate passwords, those sorts of things, for your backup environments, so that if somebody gets at the production data, they can't also encrypt the backup, right? Because in a lot of cases, that ransomware, if you can't recover that data from yesterday, you might be writing a big check, right? In order to get that data back, if you can. So definitely something to think about as we look at our backup solutions. So here's our next webinar poll, if you want to pop that up. Cool, I'm gonna move this over here. How often do you test the backups? This one, a little bit near and dear to my heart. I have a background in the managed services business. Spent 5 years as a director at a firm here in Denver, and you'd be amazed how many people say, "Oh yeah, I've got backups," and then you go in to just make sure that everything is working, and you discover that, hey, you know what? It may have been, as I mentioned earlier, running and completing successfully, but you're not actually able to get that data back. So, and without testing it, you may not have any idea what it is you've got. So take a couple seconds if you would. I'd love to get a little bit of feedback and find out what you're doing out there. Are you testing weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually? You don't know, right? Maybe this is something that's been hand off and you have no visibility into it. But maybe as a leader, it's going to be a good question to ask. Or, of course, the funny answer here is, what is testing, right? So if you've got a couple seconds here, we'd love to get your feedback, okay? I'm going to close this guy and we'll move on to the next one. So the number we've got out there is that 25% of businesses don't test their backups. And the peak here is that 41% of businesses are testing this semi-annually. Again, harkening back to my days in the managed services business, we had routines that required that we did backup tests at least every 2 weeks when we would be working on client environments. And actually, one of the awesome things about Veeam is that we can actually automate this through some of the tools that are built into the Veeam software to be able to recover a virtual machine, for example, boot it, maybe run a quick script to be able to ping it or telnet into it to make sure that services are running, and then shut it down again. So some powerful tools in the portfolio to make sure that your backups are actually doing what they report that they're doing. And then here's an interesting one, of course, too. 27% of businesses don't know their RTO. And as we talked about, the RTO is the recovery time objective. So how long is it going to take for you to get that data back in the event of a disaster? Not even how old is it, but just how long is it going to take to stand that up again, get the application going again, recover that important file. 27% of businesses say less than a day. That's great, right? But it falls off from there. 21 say within a day, between 1 and 3 days. And then 27% of businesses don't know. And that's also super scary. And we're not spending a bunch of time talking about it today, but it's worth giving some thought to a business, getting together a business impact analysis. What happens if a component of the business goes down, whether it's IT or loss of a key employee or something like that? A hurricane comes through. critical to give some thought to these sorts of things, not the least of which, of course, is the IT, right, that everybody relies on. But having a plan, business impact analysis, and a disaster recovery or business recovery plan are critical components. And then, as I said, we'll talk a little bit about recovery time and recovery point objective. The recovery time objective is, again, how long it takes to get the data and applications recovered. And the recovery point objective is how old is that data once you get it back. So there are a lot of things that can impact both of these factors. From a recovery time objective perspective, we talk about how often, a lot of times it's going to be how easy is it to stand up those applications? Are you running all physical servers? Do you have giant databases? Those sorts of things. Because the bigger and more complex these things are, the longer it's going to take to stand them up again, and the longer the business is going to be down. And then on the other hand, we've got the recovery point objective, which is how old is that data once you get it back? So a lot of folks, in the event of a major disaster, say lightning hits the office and takes out that on-prem data center, if the best you've got is a tape that you rotated out to an offsite location, I think of Iron Mountain sometimes, a lot of people use them, and that tape is a week old, now you've got to go and battle with your recovery time objective of getting the infrastructure together, and then getting the tape, and then restoring the data, and you're looking at least a week old, maybe more realistically 2 or even 3 weeks old. The impact, as we saw at the beginning of the slide, of losing that data or not having that data available for more than 10 days, and when you get it back, it's that old. The business impact is catastrophic, obviously. Most businesses are not going to survive that sort of an interruption. So as you think about what you're doing from a backup and data availability perspective, it's really critical to think through your recovery time and your recovery point objectives. Well, it looks like we've got some answers here, which is awesome. We've got 8 folks said they're testing quarterly, 5 folks said they're testing monthly, and 7 folks said that they don't know, and then of course 44 no answers. I do like that at least 2 people chimed in with what's testing, so I appreciate that. But I think it does point out, again, the importance of making sure that your backups are actually doing what you think they're doing. Now we're going to kind of get into, a little bit of this near and dear to my heart stories, really around leveraging the cloud for offsite backup. Again, I know a lot of us aren't really using tape, and maybe we're trying to do some sort of a replication or a data transfer between 2 locations. What Veeam has the ability built into it to do is be able to provide an offsite backup using our Cloud Connect tool. And we're seeing that folks are leveraging service providers like our RapidScale and Cox Business to be able to store their data for backup and recovery and disaster recovery in the cloud. That is a huge piece of this, right? It's more cost effective often than trying to purchase hardware, get a cabinet in a data center or another location, free up IT staff. We talked about this. And I know that there are always those folks who love going to Las Vegas to go visit the DR data center once a year. But is that really a great use of your IT staff's time, right? Should they be working on more important initiatives, right? And leave the backup infrastructure to Cox Business. Better management and reporting. This is something that's a critical component to what we do on the Veeam side of things. And in conjunction with Cox Business being able to provide, laser focused reporting and job management for backups. And then of course, improved service levels, right? When you've got somebody else helping you manage these sorts of things, a cloud provider, it's not just up to the IT folks. There's going to be a little bit of being kept honest, right, by a third-party partner who's helping with it. Then I wanted to talk a little bit about the 3-2-1 rule. This is something, if you've ever spoken to anybody at Veeam, you've heard about this before, but we're super focused on this as a strategy. And another, just like your recovery time and recovery point objectives, a really important thing to think about. Do you have 3 copies of your data? And do you have it on 2 different types of media? So one might be in production and one might be on tape or on a server somewhere else. And then of course, the most critical part of this is the offsite copy. And this is where you are really hedging your bet, especially when you use some of the tools built into Veeam, like we talked about for Cloud Connect and sending it off to a service provider, really hedging your bet in the event that there's some sort of a catastrophic issue. And if we learned anything by watching, this terrible outcomes in California this year and all of the named storms we've seen in the Southeast, having an offsite backup with a cloud provider that can help you stand that infrastructure up again is critically important to every business. So offsite backup powered by Cox. Jared, do you want me to review this or do you want to hop in here, sir?
You can go ahead and take this one. I'll grab the next one.
Yep. Sounds good. So powered by Cox Business here, right? Simple to set up, hosted repositories like we talked about. It's going to be offsite. Cox Business is going to be offering this in a secured cloud architecture, right? It's not going to be in a closet in some other location, right? They spend the time, the money, and making sure that they have the expertise to ensure that this data is going to be recovered in a secure environment. End-to-end encryption, right? This is also a critical piece. When you leverage Veeam with Cloud Connect and Cox Business, we're actually sending that data across the internet encrypted over an SSL connection from each location, so you don't have to worry about any of those man-in-the-middle attacks, somebody grabbing your data and being able to leverage it. Rapid recoverability solutions, right? This is also a critical component. It's not just about, as we talked about, just having the backup. It's how are you going to get that stuff running again, get those applications back in the hands of your revenue producing employees. Granular and full restores is another super important one. You don't want to have to spend 5 hours restoring a whole system in order to get 1 or 2 files back, right? And then integration with backup, replication, and management tools. Veeam is extremely powerful when it comes to management of nightly backups, replication jobs, and those sorts of things, in addition to some of the management tools that we have out there that can be leveraged. So again, super powerful kind of turnkey solution that Veeam has built with Cox Business.
Yeah, I love this too, Dan, because, I think backup is definitely one of those services that it gets moved to the back burner a little bit. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind. And as we have transformed all of our businesses over to a very mobile and remote environment this year, this becomes more critical than ever, right? Not only just for natural disasters, and we've seen plenty this year, hopefully no more, knock on wood, but also cyber threats, ransomware you mentioned. All really critical. Ideally we stop the ransomware attack from happening in the first place, right? But in the case where they do happen, then you've got a backup that you can get and not have to worry about certain things that you may have to worry about if you didn't have a recent backup that wasn't tainted. Right. So anyway, but just to add on to what you mentioned and sort of that 3-2-1 strategy, but also everything else that goes along with that. One of the key things that we offer that a lot of providers simply don't is we've got an unmanaged, a co-managed, and a managed solution. So when you look at if you want somebody that you just want the solution, you want to manage it, you feel like you've got it, and you have the resources and IT staff to do that, then we can just help you get it set up. We'll help you with your get your local backup copy, regular backed up, and offsite to our cloud repository. You can control it almost 100% on your own. Second option, again, which is not, go ahead and click through there, is not offered from a lot of providers. This is co-managed. And the thing that's really unique about our services on the cloud side is that we offer this with most of our services, a co-managed option where we can provide the licensing and we can help you configure. And then we can also help you with the ongoing management support and provide you, the rapid response support, which we've become really well known for. So we can hold your hand and help you when you need to, and but not take over full control. So the third option then obviously is managed hosted backup. This is where you leave it to us. Maybe you don't have the IT resources, or you simply want to just not have to worry about it, not think about it. We'll manage it 100% in our infrastructure platform, handle the licensing, the managing, the monitoring, and even the support for you through our rapid response team. So 3 different flavors and options as far as how to engage with us. And, what we see is that we see people, kind of leaning towards all 3 of them based on what their business model looks like. So one's not necessarily better than the other. It just really is what's custom fit for you and your business. So I think that wraps it up. So we'll go ahead and take some questions now. Summer, do we have any questions out there?
Yes, we do. Let's just
Great.
kick it off. What type
Cool.
of access would we have to the Veeam software suite? Would we have administrative privileges?
Yes, so you would have, and of course that it's going to vary depending on the deployment, right? If it's going to be managed, co-managed, etc. But right, if you're going to be managing it on your own, and and then using Cox Business on the Cloud Connect side of things, you would have administrative access to that Veeam environment and be able to make any changes that you need, add virtual machines, do your own restores, that sort of stuff. So for sure, that's an option.
Excellent. Next up, do we have control of our own backups and schedule?
Yeah, again, yes, right. There may be a scenario on that fully managed side where I don't want to be mean here, but say you don't have full faith in a junior IT person and you're afraid they might jeopardize the availability of that data, so you could lock it down. But again, if you're going to go with that kind of manage it yourself or co-manage it, you'd have the ability to do your own restores, modified jobs. You'd say you stand up an application that changes constantly and you want to do a backup 3-4 times a day during business hours, for example, you could do that for sure.
Awesome. Another one that just came in. For small businesses, is the Google Cloud a safe place to keep data?
Well, so this may be, and I have passionate feelings about the appropriate use cases for public cloud, and I'd be happy to take that conversation offline if somebody wants to follow up with me on it. But from an infrastructure perspective, Google and Amazon and Microsoft, they do a great job, right? Not dissimilar to Cox Business and Rapid Scale. They're professionals. They do this for a living, and they host, many different customer environments in there. So from a platform perspective, Google's going to be great, but that's not really what this is all about, right? Platform operating systems, that's only a piece of this. Now we're really talking about the applications and the features and the functionality. So theoretically, you could just, buy a virtual machine or use some sort of a blob storage to be able to store your data, but it's not going to have all the features and really enable that rapid recoverability without leveraging a tool like Veeam. So that's, I think, how I would answer that. Jared, what do you think? Did I miss anything there?
Yeah, I think it's a little based on the services that you're buying, right? I mean, I think some of them, I'm always careful because I've seen businesses using the consumer branded, cloud services and both on AWS and Google for that matter. And, there's obviously even some conditions to consider in their AUP and in their legalese that I would sometimes point customers to. But in general, to your point, I mean, I think they're good solutions. I just feel that again, Veeam being an industry leader and Gartner Quadrant leader, there's definitely reasons for why you're there. So
right, for sure, right. So hopefully that answers the question. If there are any follow-ups, feel free to reach out to Summer and we can dig into the conversation a little bit more.
Yes, indeed. Okay, if we have Veeam locally, can we point it to Cox as a data store? Can you all help set it up properly locally?
So the answer to all those questions is yes, for sure. And depending kind of on what you want, some jobs, often what we see is that Veeam is going to write locally. But depending on the customer environment, it may be the case that you don't have a large repository to back up things locally, in which case you can actually back up directly to Cloud Connect. And that can be a very effective solution. So yes to all of that.
Fabulous. I'm just going to keep going because we have the time.
Yeah, keep going. We've got
What is the expected time for data backup and recovery for an example of 1 terabyte?
So that, again, a lot of things that go into that, and I'll just point out quickly that there are things like network speed and disk speed and things like that that are going to contribute to the ability to be able to recover it. But assuming that you have all the proper infrastructure in place, say, and maybe it's a 1 terabyte virtual machine running in a VMware environment, Veeam could theoretically stand that up in a rapid recovery type scenario using our data labs tools within minutes, and have a virtual machine going again with access for employees to be able to access those critical applications again within minutes. So it depends on a variety of factors, but that's really one of the things that that people lean on Veeam for, if we're being honest, is our ability to get that data back rapidly and get it back in the hands of the users.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, going back to that first slide that I shared. I think as you consolidate your providers, and you have a provider that sort of owns that connectivity piece and the CPU piece and the solutions around the backup, we can make that more seamless than somebody who doesn't own all those components. And so, being able to kind of tie that all together is very much a unique value proposition that not a lot of companies can offer.
Yeah, that's really true. And I'll just as a final note on that, right? Depending on the kind of change rate that you might see on a daily basis in a certain environment, you may be pushing a lot of data over the internet, right? But the nice thing about being able to work with, again, a partner who's providing you all these services, they can provide some consulting around that. Say, hey, you know what? We thought that this was going to be sufficient for you when all you did was Office 365, right? But now that you've got different requirements, let's take a look at your bandwidth requirements. Cool.
Yeah.
Any more, Summer?
Yes, they keep coming in.
Let's do it.
I'm trying to find where we were at. Okay, do we get to move the Veeam license if we switch storage providers?
Do we get to move the Veeam? So I'm guessing the question is, if you decided that you didn't want to use Cox Business as a Cloud Connect target. So there are a couple ways to do this, right? You certainly have the option of being able to get the licensing from Cox Business, so you don't have to go out and write a check for it. But for example, if you did decide, hey, you know what, we don't OpEx things in our company, we buy everything and we build a budget around it. Certainly a business could go out and buy their own Veeam software, contract with Cox Business for the Cloud Connects piece, and then if something changed for whatever reason, they could move that Cloud Connect to another provider for sure.
Right. Can Veeam back up Office 365 to include email, OneDrive, and SharePoint data?
We definitely can. And that would be probably something we would want to take offline and discuss separately. But we do, as part of our product portfolio, I thought I had actually dovetailed some of that stuff in there. We can do all sorts of stuff. Not only Office 365, but I was going to point out we've got Linux, we've got AIX, we've got Oracle. So there's a lot of stuff that Veeam can support from a backup perspective.
That's awesome. In what country are the cloud solutions hosted?
That's a Jared question. Jared, do you know where all those Cloud Connect repos are located?
Well, we've got, obviously multiple locations across, the USA. We also have some connectivity in Europe and also in Asia as well. So I guess it would be determined upon where people are looking to enable that.
Right. Okay.
Right. Yeah. And we can end with 2 more, and then I know there's a final slide. Do I need any special hardware or software to send backups offsite to Cox?
So you will need the Veeam for sure. And then the hardware requirements are really going to depend on what the on-premise backup requirements are. You could go with nothing, just install the software and do the backups over Cloud Connect, in which case you wouldn't need anything. But again, it kind of impacts recovery time and recovery point objective. So yes, and it depends, but of course you would need the Veeam for sure.
And we can wrap up with this one. Is
Cool.
Cost dependent on backup size or the number of servers being backed up?
It is, I think the answer to that one is that it's both. There is a cost for the number of virtual machines, for example, that are going to be backed up on premise. And then there's going to be a cost for storage in the cloud. So short answer is both.
Awesome, then we're good to go.
Cool.
Very good. Thanks, Summer. Appreciate you, fielding all those questions for us. So this is actually, I'm kind of sad. This is our last webinar for the year. We're going to come up with an entire schedule of webinars in 2021. We started these right when, the news hit around COVID in March, April timeframe. And so, but anyway, if you want to learn more, see any of the webinars we've done throughout 2021, please visit us at coxbusiness.com/cloud. And then also we've got a LinkedIn group that we've stood up just around cloud Q&A. And this is just, if you have any questions about cloud, you want to drop in, read what people are talking about. We've got a panel of experts that can help field any of those questions as well. But again, thanks for joining us. Had a great time. Thanks, Dan, for being here. Really appreciate it.
Happy to do it.
Love having Veeam as a partner. And again, just wanted to say again, thanks to all of our veterans out there. And just really appreciate the sacrifice you've made for us and our country. So have a great day, all. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Jared. Have a great day. Have a great day, everyone.